Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This happened about 3 years ago, but the memory is still crystal clear in my mind. I was working as a software developer back then, and due to some technical issues with my computer at the office, I had been working from home for a few weeks. The arrangement was great except for one small detail: my identity card was expiring, and I needed to get it renewed at the town hall. I had put off going to the town hall for weeks, partly because of how busy I was with work, and partly because dealing with bureaucracy isn't exactly my idea of a good time. But that morning I received an email from the town hall saying it was my last chance to pick up my new identity card before they would void the application, and I'd have to start the whole process over again. I live in this quiet neighborhood where most houses have these decorative stone walls around them. They're not tall, maybe knee height, but they definitely make the streets feel even narrower than they already are. My house has a garage and a driveway that leads out to one of these narrow streets where two cars can barely squeeze past each other. There's a restaurant next door that gets regular deliveries, but usually the delivery drivers are considerate enough to park in the designated area across the street. That morning, as I was rushing to get to the town hall before they closed for lunch, I found myself blocked in by a delivery van. The driver had parked right next to my driveway, making it impossible for me to maneuver out due to those stone walls on either side. When I saw him coming out of the restaurant with an empty dolly, I politely asked if he could move his van so I could get out. His response was to point at his hazard lights, saying that's what they were for. When I explained that I really needed to leave urgently, he dismissively told me to wait 10 minutes until he was done. I tried explaining that I couldn't get out at all with his van there, but he just waved me off, insisting that hazard lights meant he could park there. He went back into the restaurant, leaving me sitting in my car, half blocking the street since I couldn't fully reverse back into my driveway. I watched him make 3 more trips, taking his sweet time with each delivery, occasionally looking my way with what looked like smug satisfaction. Finally, he finished his deliveries and got into his van. Instead of backing up, which would have been the sensible thing to do, he motioned for me to back up my car so he could drive forward and make a U-turn further down the street. That's when I had my moment of clarity. I switched off my engine, turned on my hazard lights, and sat back in my seat with a smile. He started honking his horn and yelling at me to move my car. I calmly explained through my rolled-down window that my hazard lights were on so I could park there, using his own logic against him. He jumped out of his van, red-faced and shouting that this was different because he was making a delivery. I simply replied that I was making a point. He started cursing and waving his arms around, which only made me more determined to stay put. After a few minutes of this tantrum, he realized I wasn't going to move. The look on his face when he finally understood he'd have to back up his van for about 300 meters down the narrow street was insane. I watched in my rearview mirror as he struggled with the reverse gear, occasionally stopping to readjust because of the tight space. Each time he had to correct his angle, I could see him getting more and more frustrated. When another car came from the opposite direction, he had to back up even further to let them pass. By the time he finally disappeared around the corner, I was running late for the town hall. But as I drove there, I couldn't stop grinning. When I arrived, I explained my situation to the clerk, who surprisingly found it amusing enough to process my identity card, even though they were technically closed for lunch. A few days later, I saw the same delivery company at the restaurant, but with a different driver who respectfully parked in the designated area. Word must have gotten around. I've been working as a nanny for about 3 years now. After getting my degree in early childhood education, I decided to get some hands-on experience before opening my own daycare center. That's how I ended up working for this wonderful family with their adorable 8-month-old daughter. The mother is a surgeon, and the father runs his own tech company. They're incredibly supportive employers who treat me like family. They even helped me enroll in a business management course to help with my future daycare plans. I've been with them since their daughter was 2 months old, and we have an amazing bond. That day started like any other. It was a beautiful spring morning and I decided to take the baby to the park near their house. We often went there because it had this lovely walking trail surrounded by cherry blossoms. And the baby always enjoyed watching the petals fall while sitting in her stroller. We were on our third lap around the park when this middle-aged white woman started following us. I noticed her staring and whispering to other people in the park, pointing at me and the baby. I picked up my pace, but she kept following. Suddenly, she rushed up to us and grabbed the stroller handle, stopping us in our tracks. She demanded to know what I was doing with the baby. When I explained we were just taking our morning walk, she scoffed. She pointed out how different the baby looked from me, making it clear she didn't believe this could be my child. I tried to explain that I was the family's nanny and had been working for them for months, but she wouldn't hear it. She threatened to call the police, claiming she'd seen traffickers use the same excuse before. I told her to go ahead and call them, saying I would call the baby's mother right away. I pulled out my phone and dialed my employer. She picked up on the second ring. I quickly explained the situation, apologizing for bothering her at work, but explaining that a woman was accusing me of kidnapping her daughter. The mother immediately asked to be put on speaker. When the woman heard the mother's voice, she demanded to know who she was supposed to be. The mother identified herself and ordered the woman to let go of her daughter's stroller immediately. Instead of backing off, this woman suddenly yanked the stroller away from me and started running, screaming about saving the baby from traffickers. I immediately ran after her, shouting for help. Thank God several people in the park had already noticed what was happening. 2 joggers managed to block her path while a woman who had been walking her dog helped me catch up. The Karen was still trying to push through when a police car that happened to be passing by pulled up to the curb. When the officer asked what was happening, the woman immediately started accusing me of trafficking the baby, pointing out that I obviously wasn't the mother. I explained that I was the family's nanny and that the mother was still on speakerphone. The mother identified herself to the officers, explaining that this woman had just tried to kidnap her daughter from their nanny. She added that she was on her way and that her husband was contacting their lawyer. The officers quickly assessed the situation, especially after several witnesses came forward describing how the Karen had been stalking us around the park before confronting us. They immediately detained her, while one officer helped me check on the baby, who was thankfully unhurt but crying from all the commotion. The mother arrived within minutes, still in her surgical scrubs, having left in the middle of her hospital rounds. Then she saw that the baby's mother was also white. She started stammering excuses about just trying to help and how you can't be too careful these days. The father arrived shortly after with their lawyer. They pressed charges for attempted kidnapping, and thanks to the multiple witnesses and her prior history of harassment, she was convicted. She ended up serving jail time and was ordered to undergo mandatory counseling and cultural sensitivity training. The family insisted on adding a body camera to the stroller and gave me a personal alarm for our walks. They also started a community awareness program about racial profiling and embracing diversity. The baby is now 2 years old, and we still visit the same park. Some of the people who helped us that day still wave and smile when we see them. Even the joggers join the family's awareness program and help organize events promoting inclusion. I'm continuing my business management course and am more determined than ever to open a daycare center where all families feel welcome. The family has even offered to support me when I'm ready to start. I'm in my early 30s now, but this all started about 5 years ago when I was still working as a truck driver. The pay was decent. I was pulling in around $60,000 a year, but the hours were brutal and I was rarely home. That's when I met my wife at a local coffee shop during one of my rare days off. She was in her early 20s then, working 2 jobs while pursuing her degree. Despite growing up in a struggling household, she had this incredible drive that I'd never seen before. Her grandfather had money, but her mom had somehow burned through her share of it, and her sister followed the same path. My wife caught my attention because she was different. While her family complained about their situation, she worked tirelessly to improve hers. We hit it off immediately, and after dating for a year we got married and had our daughter. During my trucking days, I discovered I had a knack for specialty marketing. I started doing small projects on the side, and my friends kept pushing me to start my own business. When I finally decided to take the plunge, I had a serious conversation with my wife. I explained that while I thought I could make the business work, the first year would be tough, warning her that some months I might not even be able to take a salary. She was completely supportive, saying she believed in me and that we could cut back on expenses. She added that she'd rather struggle for a year than watch me miss our daughter growing up because I was on the road. Her family, however, had different opinions. The first confrontation happened during a family dinner. My mother-in-law made a snide comment about how she'd heard I quit my job to sit at home all day. When I explained that I'd started my own marketing company and worked remotely, my sister-in-law jumped in with a nasty remark about how nice it must be to be lazy while my wife works hard. My wife defended me, insisting that I worked harder than ever and was building something for our future. My mother-in-law scoffed at this, questioning what exactly I was building besides a bigger dent in our savings, and criticized us for putting her granddaughter in daycare while I was supposedly home doing nothing. I kept driving part-time to maintain steady income, but they conveniently ignored that fact. Every family gathering became an interrogation about my unemployment. The breaking point came when my mother-in-law cornered my wife after church. She told my wife that she needed to talk some sense into me, claiming our daughter deserved better than a deadbeat father. My wife stood her ground, pointing out that our daughter had a father who was home every night to read her bedtime stories instead of being stuck in a truck somewhere in Oklahoma. She defended me, explaining that I wasn't unemployed but an entrepreneur. My mother-in-law mockingly asked if that's what they called lazy these days. That was 3 years ago. Now my marketing company has exploded. We're making more than double what I made in trucking, with minimal overhead since we kept our frugal lifestyle. I still drive occasionally for a friend to keep my commercial driver's license active, but it's more of a hobby now. Suddenly, my in-laws' attitude completely flipped. Last month, my sister-in-law texted my wife suggesting we all go to the new steakhouse downtown, specifically asking her to bring me along. When the bill came, she suddenly remembered she'd forgotten her wallet and hinted at how well we were doing now. I simply stated I'd cover my family's portion. My mother-in-law became indignant, asking if I really expected my sister-in-law to wash dishes, reminding me of everything they'd supposedly done for us. I questioned what exactly they'd done besides calling me a deadbeat for 2 years. This pattern continued. They'd invite us to expensive restaurants, try to plan family vacations, and always conveniently forget their wallets. The final straw came last weekend during a family barbecue at their house. My mother-in-law brought up their plans to renovate their house, heavily hinting at our financial success. I cut her off immediately, reminding her exactly how unsupportive they'd been when I was building the business, recounting how they'd called me lazy and a deadbeat and had tried to convince their daughter to leave me. I pointed out their hypocrisy in wanting to benefit from the success they'd ridiculed. My sister-in-law tried to dismiss it as ancient history, claiming that family helps family. My wife jumped in, pointing out that family also supports family when they're struggling, not just when they're successful. When my mother-in-law tried to defend their past behavior as mere concern for our welfare, I made it clear that while my wife could spend her money however she wanted, not a penny of my income would go to people who tried to destroy what built it. My sister-in-law accused me of being selfish and turning her sister against them, but my wife shut that down, stating that I wasn't turning her against anyone. They had shown their true colors both then and now with their entitled behavior. We left after that. During our drive home, my wife thanked me for working so hard for our family, even when her family tried to tear me down. The next day, my mother-in-law sent a group text about a planned family vacation to Hawaii, clearly expecting us to foot the bill. My wife responded perfectly. She sent a screenshot of all their previous nasty messages about me being unemployed and lazy, followed by a message explaining that we couldn't fund their vacation because my lazy husband's money was tied up in our daughter's college fund and our retirement. She suggested they try being unemployed like me, since it seemed to pay better than whatever they were doing. They haven't brought up money since. I've been working at the tech store for about 8 months now. It's not exactly where I imagined myself after graduating with a degree in computer science, but the job market has been tough. And honestly, I enjoy helping people figure out their tech problems. Plus, the employee discount isn't bad, and my coworkers are pretty cool. The store is located in this busy shopping center, and we get all kinds of customers. Mostly decent folks, but occasionally we get some interesting characters. Our uniform is pretty distinct, all black with our store's name plastered everywhere in bright blue. The cargo pants are comfortable, but what I love most is the hoodie. It's got our store's name across the chest, down the right arm, and in huge letters across the back. You literally can't miss it. This incident happened last week, and I still can't believe how ridiculous it was. It was during my lunch break, and I was starving. We got this grocery store right next door. You know the type, all decked out in bright green, kiwi-themed everything. Their workers wear these green fleece jackets that honestly look way comfier than ours. I was standing in front of the sandwich display trying to decide between tuna and chicken when I heard someone clearing their throat repeatedly behind me. I didn't turn around because, well, why would I? I'm clearly not wearing their uniform. Then suddenly I felt this hand grab my shoulder and yanked me backward. I nearly lost my balance. I spun around and demanded to know what was wrong with her and why she'd grabbed me like that. She immediately started berating me for ignoring a customer and demanded that I show her where the dairy-free section was located. I just stared at her, trying to process the absurdity of the situation. She was this middle-aged woman with that typical, "I want to speak to your manager" haircut, wearing what looked like an expensive exercise outfit. Her patience quickly ran out, and she started yelling at me to do my job and show her what she was looking for. I put on my best customer service smile. 8 months in retail really teaches you how to fake it. I politely explained that I couldn't help her find the dairy-free items because I didn't work there, and suggested she ask one of the actual employees, pointing to someone in a neon green fleece jacket who was stocking shelves nearby. She got even angrier and started yelling, insisting I worked there because I had helped her find a headset earlier. She demanded I show her the dairy-free section, getting louder with every word. Feeling trapped, I backed up against the cold refrigerated display as other customers began staring, my face burning with embarrassment. A tall security guard I'd seen around the shopping center showed up, clearly drawn by the commotion. He told her to back off and leave me alone. She argued, claiming I worked there and threatening to report everyone to corporate. The guard explained I worked at the tech store next door and pointed out the difference in uniforms, but she refused to listen. She kept insisting it was confusing for me to shop in uniform. The guard stood firm, giving her 2 choices: accept help finding her items or leave. She demanded the manager, but the guard said the response would be the same. While they argued, I quickly grabbed a random sandwich and slipped away. A grocery store employee found me hiding in the aisles and kindly helped me finish shopping. I rushed to check out and made it back to my break room, where my supervisor, who had seen everything through our store window, gave me an extra 15 minutes for my break. She later told me the woman tried to complain about me pretending to work at 2 places, but security stopped her at the door. Both stores banned her after reviewing the footage of her behavior. Ironically, it turned out my co-worker, who has the same hair color as me, was the one who helped her earlier. She had mistaken me for them. Now, whenever I visit the grocery store, the security guard greets me with a friendly nod, and the employees always point out the dairy-free section, even though I've never needed it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.